Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I'm not a dog trainer, but these other people you see here are. We get together, we have a discussion about a dog training or dog-related topic, come up with some thoughts, some ideas, and sometimes some answers, but always have an interesting discussion. And today's topic kind of piggybacks on something we had done a few weeks ago, which is that we're kind of coming out of this lockdown in a lot of places. So, and one of the things that we discussed in that, and I guess that's a good place to start, was about separation anxiety. And that you're probably, as dog trainers, going to be seeing a lot more cases of separation anxiety. So my question to you trainers today is, what can you do with your clients now to help them before they come out of the lockdown? And what can you do going forward with that as trainers with separation anxiety? And Bonnie, you want to start us out today?
Well, you just said trainers that have separation anxiety.
Okay,
so,
well, you know what I meant.
But we love people too.
Yeah. Walk-a-doo, walk-a-doo, walk-a-doo. You have to be from New York to know what that means. Never mind, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you know, I have separation anxiety leaving my house, you know, so I guess it's the same thing, you know, a dog, oh, they're leaving me, and oh, I'm going outside and might get COVID. So yeah, goodness, you know, separation anxiety, as all of you know, and as most dog trainers know, it runs the gamut from just confinement stress to just an overall stressed out dog, to a dog that really can't be alone, a dog that can only be with the owner and not okay with anybody else. So there's so many variables with it. And in my past as a dog trainer, I have had some luck, and I was grateful that another trainer walked me through the steps with Roger Abrantes' method from his book, Dogs Home Alone, of making the bed, taking a bed, and that's where this dog gets all the attention.
Giving the dog a place to have as its own that it can get attention. Is that correct?
Well, it's so that the attention from the owner only comes on that bed.
Okay.
And then desensitizing the owner to leaving with the dog on the bed, seeing the door, and it's this whole, it's time, distance, for all of the parts of it. He has about 5 parts to it. And then another part is just stimulating the dog, searching exercises. He has you know, you do sit down, stand, free 6 times in a row. Then you do that 3 or 4 times a day. And it's kind of the learn to earn program and enrichment, but it really stresses a step, and the owner not baby talking to the dog. Just, you know, if the dog's name is Joe, you just say Joe, and that's it. Not coochie coo and
keeping it really simple.
So that's what the dog hears from you. This is it, Joe, good. And one thing I found really cool about Abrantes' method is that he stresses saying good with saying good, with your mouth like in an O, good. And honestly, you know, when a lot of owners, they're harsh in how they say things, this is good because they can't babble. It's like you say the dog's name, Joe bed, good. That's it. You go put the food down, go back to the bed, a hand signal. You say find, and then the hand signal.
Okay.
Dog goes to get the food, and you continue that with the distance, with opening and closing the door and not going out, then eventually going out. But everything has to come on the bed, and a Brontes doesn't feel the dog should be sleeping in the room with the owner. That's hard to do. So I've told clients, well, if the dog sleeps with you, put that be all and end all bed on your bed and
Okay.
let the dog sleep in that.
Right. I understand.
But it's, you have to get a client who will be relaxed about it and not try to rush it and look at the dog's body language. But I have also found that sometimes just teaching the dog the bed exercise fixes it.
Okay.
And that's where the dog will stay and be comfortable when they leave.
Right.
And I've learned about other methods that seem a little more complicated to me. So this has always been my go-to exercise for it. I know that's not prevention, but in terms of an
So you're more talking about once this is over and you know that the dog has separation anxiety, this is what you would do. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Jeff, is there anything that you would do with a client to prepare them for that? Is there anything that you would do now before, say they live in one of these states that's locked down right now, and when that lockdown is over, you know that the dog's going to have some separation anxiety. So is there anything you would do right now?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously we talked about this probably a month or so ago, maybe more. I'm not even sure when that episode that we talked about that was. I did one on my YouTube channel too, trying to prepare dogs post-COVID, right? The problem here is, I mean, it's almost the end of July, right? So we're talking 5 months of lockdown, okay? Now a good portion of the country, tack on 2 to 3 months of understimulation because of winter, right? So you have understimulated dogs now with separation anxiety, depending on where you live in the country. But as it relates to this and separation anxiety, I mean, at this point, if they weren't taking the advice of professionals a couple of months ago, they're in a little worse shape. I hate to say it. I mean, they just are. And, sometimes I get my rescue thoughts mushed in with my training thoughts.
Sure.
Because obviously I can't help but think how many dogs are going to be surrendered once people go back into the real world. And we did an episode on that too here in the forum about the increase in adoptions and our fear after the virus is, done with, which, at this point, maybe it won't be an issue because it doesn't seem the virus is ending, but anyway, I digress. So part of me, my mindset now when I'm talking to people or responding to emails or messages is twofold, is managing the behavior while we can modify it. And Bonnie hit it right on. I mean, talk separation anxiety. I mean, aside from the gamut of potential symptoms, you also have the gamut and levels of intensity that's associated with separation anxiety, from chewing on a cage bar to self-mutilation. So you have like a pretty wide range of potential symptoms resulting from separation anxiety. We only know that, right, when we start leaving the house. That's why we tell people, or told people a few months ago, take a walk, leave the dog home, crate train the dog, do all these things. Because if they can't manage the behavior, they're not going to modify it, right? Especially with separation anxiety, because if they're leaving a house and the dog does have separation anxiety and starts chewing or peeing or pooping, obviously the chewing is a health hazard to the dog. The peeing and the pooping is really frustrating to owners and potentially expensive, right? Because if they're damaging furniture or hardwood floors or things along those lines, dogs are going to start getting surrendered. So crate training, I think if owners did anything, at least start crate training. And if you have an escape artist, you have to invest in a good gorilla cage that the dog can't get out of, that if he bites the bars, he'll only bend them, or she'll only bend them. And, they're, a decent gorilla cage, like the Pro Select, they're like $400 or $500. They have knockoffs on eBay. I'm telling you, they are not the same. I've had the cheapies. They pop the bars right off.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, granted, we're talking about, 85-pound
severe
bullies with severe anxiety, but nevertheless, having a secure crate keeps the dog safe. So it's not, first and foremost, safer for the dog. And number two, cheaper for the owner, right? Because whether we like to believe it or not, if a dog is costing an owner thousands of dollars in household repairs and stuff, that's going to push them towards surrendering.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
And then you move the problem. So you have a dog with separation anxiety, moved to a completely new environment after however many years they were with the owner. Yeah. So then that anxiety is only going to intensify, and potentially anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, I right now, crate train and start doing those little exercises to start leaving the dog home in the crate for, half hour, an hour, 2 hours, and yeah, hire a trainer. I mean, obviously I'm biased because, I'm a trainer, but, hire a trainer for them to assess your dog because, there are, there's certain things that we could help owners as far as daily stimulation, mind stimulation things when the owner's not there. And then we could talk about calming music, natural supplements, recreational chews, puzzle toys, things along those lines. And the same holds true for crate training in general, right? Why do a lot of dogs develop separation anxiety in the crate? Because they're only crated when the owner leaves. That's not how you crate train a dog, right? You have to crate the dog when you are home. So the crate is just part of the environment. It's just part of the dog's daily life. It's not just when you leave. But I don't know. I'll shut up.
That's okay. So Steve, is it about getting the dog into habits now? Is that what you would recommend based upon what Jeff was talking about, or am I oversimplifying it?
I think that the whole topic is it's a hot, the whole thing's hot. I'll tell you, what's in my mind. If I go back to I don't know, I want to say 1970 something, I think that some of the best information that I got was then, and a lot of it came from Dr. Borchelt. Because first there was the whole criteria, for diagnosing separation anxiety, right? Because dogs will do these things. They'll go to the bathroom in the house. They'll be destructive. They will excessively vocalize. They can do that, and it could be any number of reasons for any of these behaviors. So first, the differential on separation anxieties. So when does the behavior occur? You have to kind of look at it and say you don't really have a separation anxious dog if the manifestation that you're thinking, the barking, the elimination, the destruction happens well into the departure. So the owner's been out for 2 hours and the dog then starts up. That wouldn't be classified as a separation case. Right? You have to go look for something else, boredom or any number of things. But separation, technically, based on their criteria, was the behavior will occur within 30 to 60 minutes of the departure. And that leads to the concept of separation anxiety has to do with attachment in the first place, right? Because you can't be separation anxious if you're not attached. Right?
Over attachment, is that what you're saying? Or
so you get this over attachment and you can't deal with being left. So if you have a crateable dog, you can manage this thing that way without all the stuff that you'd have to do if you're not crating the dog, right? So the advice I think, that I always stuck to was assume that the dog is anxious before you leave, that it's all the pre-departure cues that started going. Then comes the whole adrenaline thing, the chemical aspect of it, right? So the psychological thing and the cues, whatever those are, the departure cues, you put that together so the dog sees the coat, the keys, the bag, whatever it is.
Right.
The dog is overwhelmed with adrenaline, freaking out because there's impending departure. So, it's always been sort of my thoughts hanging back with that stuff, that if you can uncouple the departure cues in the first place, then you're leaving a relaxed dog. And there's no bed, there's no exercise, there's nothing. That's just, by the way, the coat, the doorway, these things no longer necessarily mean I'm going. And if you can uncouple the departure cues, so where the dog doesn't care as you're getting ready to go, and the dog's laying there like relaxed, you got it going on. If you go before that, it was the time gradient concept. Go out for a second, go out for, day in and out, but it never worked.
Right.
Because they left out the whole idea that the animal had become anxious even before the departure. How can you even go out for 1 second? If you can't go to the door on the inside and grab the knob and the dog's not cool with that, going through the door is just like push the dog over the edge, right? So you got to go way back and work out those details. Like, so what does the dog see? What do you notice that makes the dog reactive in the morning? Is it your shoes? Because they're all different. They all see what they see, right? Based on
right.
behavior. So you got to like define those departure cues, and then you got to uncouple those in order to have a dog that's truly cool when you go.
So if you had a client who the dog was starting to show some signs of this, even before the lockdown is over, they're going back to work, et cetera, this is how you would start working on it. Is that correct? Or
put your coat on, grab your car keys and sit on the couch and watch TV and ignore the dog. What the dog's going to do. Because I feel like, so there are well written up in veterinary behavior books, the concept of the stay, which Abrantes has kind of touched on with this bed thing in a way.
Sure.
Stay is a command, right? Telling the dog it's got to do it is about responsiveness and good training and all that. But if it's not the dog's idea, if the dog's staying simply from a command, I don't think you're dealing with the emotional aspect of the dog.
No, but Steve, let me just jump in. That's why that's why all of the emotions and the love from that owner that the dog is attached to and can't, is involved with, the affection is on that bed so that the dog gravitates to be safe. And the whole process is the dog being comfortable with itself too, to be alone. And I think he does have the keys thing and the departure cues as well. But it, and then comes to play too, what if the owner is stressed? And what if the owner is, wanting this to happen too fast and not reading the dog's body language? I mean, the dog has to be relaxed at some point so I think it's complicated, like you say.
Yeah.
If the dog is, if William Campbell used to say that if you have a dog like this, you should sit around for like 20 to 30 minutes having coffee or reading the paper before you leave. And, give the dog a chance to relax, and then just pick yourself up and go out the door quietly. I mean, how many people turn around and look at their dogs before they walk out the door and point their finger at them and say, "Mommy's leaving now. Be a good boy." And the dog's already a bundle of nerves. He needs to hear that like a hole in the head. Pointing at him and they're staring at him. It's like, "You be a good boy." I mean, come, because folks don't know. But what about the vet that once said, if you spray some odoriferous thing, whatever it is, some scent, every time you come home, so upon entry, you produce this smell, right? And when the dog learns to associate the smell with that good feeling of you coming home, and then you start spraying it before you walk out, so that the dog can't be in a happy state and a sad state at the same time, and that might help change the dog's sort of aura for a minute. Which, all that stuff. I mean, I love this stuff, because it's a little complicated, but
Have you found, Steve, that just those departure cues, if people really work it, that can, quote unquote, fix it?
I have, like, I can't countless number of separation cases, and I feel like, I've done best by having them uncouple the departure cues,
Mm-hmm.
and not even worry about the time gradient, because I think if the dog's cool with you leaving, it doesn't matter how long you're gone.
Right. Right.
For the ones that they're not going to do it. They're going to complain, I don't have time, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Part of the crate thing, which is the time consuming, training the dog to go to the crate happily, then only closing the door when you're sitting in a chair near the dog, and all these things. And if you can leave the room, then you're stepping in the right direction, because the dog tolerates that. And the crate sometimes becomes an excellent tool. But I've seen dogs hurt themselves because they were severe cases, and broken jaws, broken legs,
Wow.
all stuff. I had one dog that pulled a wire in and poked itself, a chocolate lab that had white dots all over it for every puncture that it had in its body from the wire crate. All the hair grew back white. So it was like white spots on a chocolate dog. It was really very sad to see. But and I've had other cases, dogs going through glass plate windows every day. So it could be real rough. And medication is a piece of this thing. And,
Sure.
I mean, and if you got to play the game, if you do the whole thing's about bonding. So in some ways, more time spent with the dog. If you're not careful about how you spend that time, you're only making the problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
If dog, all it wants to do is crawl into your skin. If you get in with that, and that's okay, then you're helping the dog to be able to deal with the departure. So as you say, it's complicated. As I say,
as you say. Dave, you want to add anything to this?
It's not much more to add. I mean, pretty much we covered, pretty much everything comprehensively. I mean, I guess the thing, being, let's say we don't know if there's separation anxiety at all. They say that the dog is freaking out, whatever, a little bit. Obviously, take a history like we would do with any particular case, and find out what's going on. Is the dog urinating? Maybe the dog is urinating. Is it more of a house training? Is it a puppy? Is it an older dog? And even if it's an older dog, maybe it wasn't trained properly. It's always had a house breaking / house training issue. So it may not be separation anxiety, but it could, depending upon when it's happening and so forth. If everything's great when the people are home and the dog's going where it should on the pad, and when they take it outside, it goes where it should and everything else, but they leave and there's pee all over the place, then there might be some kind of an issue. If there's maybe sweaty paw prints on the wooden floor or something, is a dog pacing and things like that back and forth, drooling, diarrhea, etc. The more of these things, or if something's very extreme, even just one thing, but it's very extreme, then maybe. And then it's a question of, okay, are we okay if one person leaves, or just as long as one person is there and we're okay, or one pet is there, whether it be a cat or a dog or a chicken or whatever it might be, are we okay? Or just anybody leaves, or any animal leaves and the dog is freaking out. And based on the feedback we get, we would adjust the training accordingly. In terms of, like, we're talking about these departure cues, it's complicated, like Steve would say. There's different views, and I think as we all train, I think we have to look at the individual dog, because there's some viewpoints where it's like, okay, we should, if it's like, okay, we get up in the morning, we take our shower, we get up, we get changed, we put our clothes on, we have our breakfast, then from there maybe we put our keys in our pocket, then we put a jacket on. We had that order, right? So now the typical thing is, okay, we changed up the order, kind of like what Steve was saying. Okay, let's do it in reverse order, or put our keys in our pocket, but don't go anywhere, sit down and watch TV. So I think personally with some dogs that's going to work great, but other dogs, like for instance Stephanie Bourns-Weil, who's out of I think Tufts University, behaviorist there, and she kind of makes a valid point. One thing she mentions is that in some cases that can get the dog confused, because now it's like, then it figures it out what's going on, like, oh, the person's just sitting down and watch TV, but then they're going to start going at other times or whatever, and it's like now the dog's always going to be antsy, doesn't know when you're coming and going and things like that. Yeah. So I guess it's one of those it depends kind of a thing. Something else to add in there is just some technology. Add a webcam. So the person's like, well, I think, I'm not sure, whatever. Well, put the webcam in there. So if you're working in one room, put the webcam in another room, just see what the dog is doing when you're home, how he acts, so you see the body language and everything else there, versus when you leave the house, I should say, and open the door, what they look like right away versus, 5-10 minutes after you leave and things like that. Then you can kind of adjust the plan accordingly. But I think overall, the good thing, which like what Bonnie was saying and everyone else was saying, is some place for safety, whether it be the crate or a bed. I think that's important.
Okay.
And the crate's important too, but I think with that crate, if the dog's not comfortable going in the crate right off the bat, it should be, like everyone's talking about, desensitized condition, because a lot of separation anxiety dogs that have it already and pretty bad in those very confined spaces, they may feel trapped. But if it's conditioned properly and desensitized and so forth, then we can kind of take that out of the way, But I think if you have to go out, that's the other thing too, is that compliance. Taking all those steps right now, this would be a good time to do that, because you're home for the most part. Whereas when you're at work, there's not always somebody there to do all those steps. If you can't do all those steps and that compliance kind of thing, if you just miss it once every now and then, it's just not going to work. You got to be consistent like everything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if you have dogs that have been shuffled around a lot, and my guess is that and I'm sure Jeff, with your rescue, a dog that's been shuffled around to homes or in different rescues, and then somebody gives it up, or it's in a shelter for 3 months, it might end up having some separation issues just from being so insecure and not knowing what the heck is. I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't hear you.
They call that traumatic departure, right? So the dog loves the family who's dumping them, and they're handing over the leash, and they're upset that they're giving the dog up, and they're upset, and the dog's upset, and the dogs are bonded to them, and then it's ripped away emotion. So, Jeff sees that all the time. Dog had somebody, and now comes the next somebody. And if they bond real tight with a dog real fast, because isn't that the way it goes? That the good people come and they look at this poor dog and they say,
"Yep,
don't worry, I got you now. I got you. I know you had a miserable life, and I got you." And they bond real tight, real fast, and the next thing you know, they can't walk out the door. And so trying to get these people to slow down with their attachment process so that they don't make this dog so dependent on them that the dog can't breathe in their absence. I've given steak to dogs, like frozen steak, as just something to try. Forget the Kong, although, Jeff, I want to bite that red Kong that's right behind you. It's been teasing me. Got this drop.
Stay.
Okay, come.
I found that no matter what you give them, if they're truly separation anxious, that frozen steak will be there when you come home. And when you walk in the door and the dog's finished doing his crazy routine, like, thank God you're alive, right? Then they run and they grab the steak and lay down and chew on it because they finally are comfortable, right? Trying to give them something, a stuffed Kong or some amazing thing to try to take their mind off the fact that you've walked out the door is silly. It just doesn't work. I had better stuff with the Thunder Shirt, to be honest with you, than I have with trying to stuff a Kong or get the dog to get itself busy with something. I found that the Thunder Shirt, there's a lot of ways, but,
And one of the ways is one method, they use treat and trains, so that the dog's always there at this thing with the food coming out. And for some, I guess that works in the process.
And another thing Steve was mentioning earlier, the people, just going to the supermarket, I'll be right back,
Excuse me.
The return is just as important as the departure, right? Coming and going, it should be a non-event. Just leave. I got pit bulls, so my dogs are happy to see me if I walk out to throw the garbage out and come back. They think I was gone 8 hours, right?
Right.
It's like, oh my God, Daddy's back, um, but they don't jump on me and I ignore them. I don't acknowledge them when they're in that elevated state of mind, right? Because, I mean, at face value, separation anxiety, right, is some kind of stimulation, right? Obviously, it goes different ways. So, you know, the holistic approach is to make sure that we're not inadvertently, you know, rewarding any kind of spikes in their stimulated states of mind. So coming home should be a non-event. And the whole shelter dog thing too, and I won't talk too long about this, but separation anxiety sometimes is environmental as well. I know dogs, they've been in shelters for 2-3 years. That is their home. It's hard for us humans to understand that.
Yeah,
you know, we think shelters are shitty, but that's that dog's safe haven, and then it's put into a domestic environment. And this separation anxiety crops up. You know, so in people who move, dogs never had problems. They go to a new home, shit hits the fan, right? So environment is also another consideration if people are moving or planning to move. You know, just something to throw out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't that like, you know, somebody getting out of prison? And I know that there's like a thing basically where some people get out of prison and they're not comfortable being out of prison because they've been in prison so long. So I'm guessing it's very similar to that, Jeff. You know,
I don't think so because, well, I've never been in prison for a long time. Like, that's where like that you're humanizing dogs a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that.
People are in prison most of the time because they did something wrong, but don't let me get that started. Most of the time they did something wrong, so they're in prison. The dog, that is the dog's home.
Right. Okay.
So it's,
and I can understand you saying that I'm whatever that word is,
the same attachment. Yeah, the same attachment. A dog can be attached to a human. A dog can also be attached to an environment, right? Maybe they might be in a run for 2 years next to that same other dog. They might be best friends. There's a lot, you know, environmentally, there's a lot that goes into it. That's all. But
okay, well, as we've mentioned quite a few times in this forum today, it is complicated, as Steve quite often says. But I think we had a very interesting discussion, and I think that I have some better idea, and I hope that people who are watching this have some better idea of separation anxiety and of how to at least look at it and possibly help with it. So I want to thank you trainers for all being here today. I want to thank everybody for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that thumbs up button for this video. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot now, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.